Levi Strauss versus Guess Clothing Company by Dan Ziegler. This video will be covering a few things. First, it'll cover the company info behind Levi Strauss and Guess Clothing Company. Next, we'll do a VRIO analysis, then an ROIC analysis. After those two, we'll decide who is winning between these two companies. And finally, we'll make a recommendation for the losing company how they should catch up. To start off, I'll go over the background of Levi Strauss. You could say that pioneering American apparel, Levi Strauss and Company, has jeans in their jeans. Founded in 1853 as a dry goods store in San Francisco, they quickly started making denim, and by 1890s, the first pair of Levi 501s was created. With the help of a local tailor who discovered the copper rivets to reinforce the pocket stitches, Levi Strauss received U.S. patent 139121. This gave Levi's an incredible competitive advantage in the clothing industry in the late 1800s, and then from that moment on. Levi Strauss was a private company until publicly traded in 1971. That lasted until 1985 when the family recaptured the company, and until recently until they went public again in early 2019. Although the Haas family, who is the descendants of Levi Strauss, still control it. Levi Strauss sells jeans and sportswear under Levi's, Dockers, and Signature by Levi Strauss, as well as the Denizen brands in over 110 countries, making them a global manufacturer in the name brand clothing. This company sells Levi's and Dockers products worldwide through their chain retailers such as JCPenney, Kohl's, Walmart, and Target, and in department stores such as Macy's, Nordstrom's, and Barney's, as well as having over 695 company-owned stores in over 30 countries. Outside the U.S. and those company-owned stores, Levi's also has 2,200 franchised or brand-dedicated stores. Now looking into their financials, the company's revenue was about $4.5 billion in fiscal 2019, which was slightly up from the prior year before that. The increase was mostly due to the revenue that was generated from Europe's industry. America's industry contributes to about 60% of the total industry during 2016, while Europe and Asia's were 25 and 15%. The high cost of producing goods that the company sells, along with its selling, general, and administration expenses, resulted in the low net income of $4.5 billion. Levi Strauss makes more than 75% of its revenue from Levi branded pants, showing their dependence and dominance in this industry. Company operated in online stores generated about 30% of the revenues, while the other 70% of the revenues came from retailers and department stores, showing that they can make more of their profit from non-company owned and non-online stores. The strategy for Levi Strauss concentrates on a particular niche markets for the denim clothing industry, especially when it comes to jeans. They make several well-specified products that creates the brand loyalty and makes them harder for competition, and that's why they are a focused cost leader. For the SWOT of Levi Strauss, their strengths include many things, but their two biggest strengths are their brand popularity, which helps them thrive in their marketplace. Besides their brands, they also have a tremendous distribution network over many years of being in the market. They have built a reliable distribution network that reaches a majority of the international potential market. Their weaknesses, looking at their 10K report, Levi Strauss has a problem with their cash. Their current asset ratio and their liquid asset ratios show that the company could use their cash more efficiently than whatever they're currently doing with it. Another weakness is that they have a high attrition rate in their workforce. In the last 10 years, they've had significant problems maintaining employees and having to hire and fire and retrain many employees. Opportunities for Levi Strauss, the biggest opportunity comes from their new customers and their online channel. They've been investing a large amount of money into creating a good, strong online platform. This investment has also led to increasing and helping out their fashion trends, which there's a new trend in denim, which has changed consumer behavior and led to more popularity in Levi's. Some threats that are for Levi's. New technology developed by competitors or a market disruptor could be serious threats to the industry, um, possibly pushing the efficiency frontier out. With over 70% of the revenues coming from just pants alone, if the industry does change up with an industry or with a market disruptor, there's a good threat that that stream of revenue could disappear, and that would be very bad for Levi Strauss. Now moving on to Guess Clothing Company. The Guess Clothing Company, to talk about their background, they were founded in 1981. They currently operate 945 retail stores in America, Europe, and Asia. Besides these stores, the company has licensing and distributors through roughly another 735 retail stores throughout 100 different countries. So they're also an international company. They have divided their business into five different segments: Europe, America's retail; Asia, America's wholesale, and licensing. Each location has wholesale as well as retail operations, especially in the Americas and in Asia. The licensing segment, which Guess has, comprises of 15 domestic and international licenses, and that accounts for a decent amount of their financial revenue, which I'll talk about here in a bit. So, looking into their financials, after 3 straight years of bad performance, Guess revenues finally kind of remained static and chilled out in 2016 and 2017, hovering around 2.2 billion. The company experienced sales decrease in the American retail, the American wholesale, and the licensing part of their segments of their industry, but they did see increases in Europe and Asia. Europe 9% and Asia 4%. So these are really important to look at, especially for Guess in their future, for what they should be doing in the future. One of the big problems that Guess had is that they had their profits plummet 72% from 2016 to 2017. So it went from 82 million to only 23 million. As an attempt to cut costs, they began closing underperforming stores, and they tried to restructure their debts. And this made their profits as well as their operating cash decline significantly. It declined almost their operating activities cash declined 1.8 million from 2016 to 2017, which had to do with clothing stores and having higher inventory in retail expansions into Europe and into Asia. So, Guess's retail operations in the America account for 40% of its revenues. Europe is around 35%, while the licensing and some of the Asian market is about 15% of the revenue. Besides its brick and mortar retail stores, Guess wholesales its apparel to mass merchants such as Macy's and specialty shops and upscale boutiques across the world. So because of that, I decided that their strategy is differentiation focus, which means that they're focused on having diversified products within their value chain, but focusing on mostly the higher, more luxury market. So, with no certain line of theirs being more productive than others, Guess creates everything from t-shirts and jeans to jewelry and accessories. So the SWOT for Guess, there was multiple things that I was looking into. The strengths come from their automation, which in the manufacturing process helps bring consistency and quality to their products, and that helps bring their brand name and their brand portfolio up a little higher without many problems in their clothing because of this automation. There's a very well-known fact that Guess clothing lasts a long time to their customers, which leads to their customer loyalty and the opportunities. Some of their weaknesses, they focus mostly on the premium segment, or like I said, the premier or the luxury segment, and that is a problem when it comes to the pricing, because all income groups are wanting to buy into the brand, but they can't because it's more expensive. So if they focus on a different strategy, they'd be able to compete with Levi's. But also similar to Levi's, they have a problem with their cash. They're not able to use the cash that they have properly within their business, and that's something that they should figure out before they become extinct. The opportunities that they have, Guess has a strong customer base, like I said. which that leads to very strong customer loyalty. Another opportunity Guess has is their diversified products. So, like I said before, they have everything from t-shirts to jewelry, and that helps them expand their business and diversify their customer base. So they're not just having people coming for their jeans, they have people coming for all of their clothing. The threats that come for Guess, the prices of raw materials have been increasing at a rapid pace for them, and although they do have good high automation, their suppliers sometimes have been problems to them. Another threat is obviously the competition. Uh, Levi Strauss is one of their biggest competitors, and they are continuing to be very successful. So they're having problems with those and new entrants to the market. Now I'm going to discuss the VRIO for these two companies. So for Levi Strauss, talking about their value, yes, they are valuable. They do have a valuable brand name and their distribution network. After years of being in business, they have very strong customer loyalty, just like Guess does. But Guess does have some other valuable core competencies, such as their licensing and their economies of scale when it comes to their automation. If is it rare? Yes, both companies do have some rare competencies. For Levi's, their competencies come from their products and their brands, and then for Guess, it comes from their customer loyalty and their automation. Is it difficult to intimidate? Or yeah, intimidate. It is and it isn't. In my opinion, I don't think it is exactly hard to intimidate. For Levi's, they used to be much more hard to intimidate before other companies started using the same rivets on their jeans. But now that other companies have similar technology, it's not very hard to make clothing, and it's something that any company could join in as long as they have the ability to. And when it comes to organization, Levi's company is focused on their clothing and their product lines, while Guess is more focused on making as many products as possible, including jewelry. Well, that being said, without the lack of difficulty to intimidate, the companies really only have a temporary competitive advantage. Um, a market disruptor could potentially change everything, and that could make huge waves if someone came in with a new technology or something like that. Moving on to the ROIC analysis, the ROIC shows that Levi's is performing at a much higher level than Guess. Their ROIC is over 13% higher, so that shows that Levi gains more profit per the capital invested, meaning they have better performance for sales. Moving on to their net income margin percent, excuse me, you can see that Levi's is also winning in this category. Guess is experiencing significant problems when it comes to gaining profits due to their restructuring of their debts and closing a few stores, and that has increased their spending, which declines their profits, which is leading to their negative net income margin percent. Moving on to the cost of goods sold versus sales, you can see that when it comes to cost of goods sold, Levi Strauss has a significantly lower percentage. So that means that they have strong suppliers and manufacturers, allowing them to have higher margins and charging cheaper prices. Looking into the prices of just like a basic denim jacket from Guess, it was around $160, while for Levi Strauss, it was only around $60 to $80. So you can see that because of this, Guess is a little bit more expensive, and that is something that shows when it comes to the cost of goods sold that they're using more expensive materials also. When it comes to selling, general, and admin expenses, Guess does have the upper hand in this category because corporate Guess is not nearly as big as corporate Levi's is. Their expenses for employees and general expenses like that are much less than Levi's would be. So besides that one category, Guess is really the underdog of the industry. They are not doing nearly as well as Levi's is. So that being said, who's winning? Levi's is definitely winning. Levi's has continued to be a huge competitor in the clothing industry for over 100 years. With such a strong brand name and overall market share in the jean industry, it's kind of hard to compete with them. Although both companies have their issues with their financial planning and their cash, Levi's sales in the wholesale industry and the retail industry are incredible, and they blow everyone out of the water. So there's no way to compete with that. So my recommendation when it comes to Guess Clothing Company, what they really need to focus on is downsizing the number of company-owned stores. Just looking at how well Levi's has done in their wholesale and their retail operations, if guests can get into their retailers, just like that bottom bullet point says, saying increase their retailers, if they can get into more retail stores, they should be able to increase their sales rather than having to pay for their stores and deal with the problems with that. Another recommendation that I had was diversifying their products, including cheaper items to expand their customer base. Right now, most of their clothings being sold are really rather unnecessarily expensive. There's T-shirts that are $40. Um, so if they were to include cheaper items that still had the same brand name, or even maybe another brand still under the Guess family tree, that would help expand their customer base and add a whole new variety of customers that they didn't have before. So these are my 3 recommendations for Guess Clothing Company, and thank you for listening.